Hey everyone, my name is Kate and welcome to Lost in My Library. Today we are doing a what I read in college video and thoughts kind of, but recommendations for classics, things that I think were interesting and things that I think people should read and not look at classics as such a bad thing. I also have non-classics here. Some of these are people I don't hear talked about on the booktube community as much. And I think their work is important and what they write about is super important. And I think that these books are important to learn about and take from. And I have a lot of feminine, I think all of these actually are written by women. I don't think I have one that's written by, no, I have one male. I take it back. I do have one male. But I am going to talk about that with a grain of salt. Just hear me out when it comes to that one, okay? Alright, let's move. So, basically, all of these books that I'm about to say that you should read, they're all classics, they're all written by women, and I read all four of them for my women's lit class, which has been one of the best college classes I've ever taken. Honestly, it was great. Love my teacher to death. She's one of my favorite professors, and I'm so glad I took this class. It's so good. I took it because of one book that I knew we were reading. The other ones I didn't. Well, I've heard a few others, but hadn't read any of the other ones. And my friends were taking, some of my friends were taking it, so I was like, cool, okay, I'll take it too. And it's been one of the best experiences, best classes ever. So anyways, so the first book is the reason I got in that class. It's Pride and Prejudice. I heard we were reading Pride and Prejudice, and this is the first thing we were reading in that class, and I was like, yes, please. One of the reasons I took the class. I love Pride and Prejudice so much, and I know this book is talked quite a bit when people talk about classics, and people talk a lot about Jane Austen, and I was actually supposed to read another Jane Austen book this semester, but I didn't, so let's not tell my professor about that fact. It's currently sitting on my shelf right now. It's called Persuasion. I actually have another Jane Austen novel on my book, or on my shelf. It's called Northanger Abbey, and it has a bunch of notes from my professor, who, it was his copy, and he's just writing a lot of notes about it. And when I started reading it, I didn't understand it even with his notes. Anyways, Pride and Prejudice. Story about Elizabeth Darcy, who is the second oldest child of the Darcy girls, and there's 5 of them. Her older sister Jane, and then there's Elizabeth. Then there is Kitty. No, Mary something. It's Mary something. Mary something. Lydia. No. Lydia's the youngest. Mary something, Kitty, and Lydia. Those two, the second youngest and the middle child, kind of forgotten about in this book. They're mentioned, but they're just forgotten about. And then there's Lydia, who, Lydia. There's a lot of female empowerment and different power of using femininity as a power rather than being shoved to the edges of society, kind of, in a way. Like when you see there's Jane, who's hopelessly in love, and she's like the romance that you like. She like what you think of cheesy romance. That's Jane. But she's having a lot of problems because like Mr. Bingley, who she's in love with, his sister is a powerhouse, and she's like, nope, not gonna happen. My brother should marry someone of status. It's a whole nother story, okay? And then there's Elizabeth, who is what you think, like, yeah, girl power. That's Elizabeth in a nutshell. And she doesn't want to just marry to get married. She wants to marry for love and all the right reasons you should get married. And so she's a powerhouse. And then there is Charlotte, who everyone's like, oh, she's a cop-out because she's marrying Mr. Collins. Listen. When I took this class, I didn't think of this at first. This girl manipulated Mr. Collins. She got in this marriage because she can manipulate Mr. Collins. Like, this girl is using her femininity to get what she wants in life. And she knows she has to get married to do it. So she's going to manipulate Mr. Collins because he's weak. Oh, this girl. Anyways, so different types of girl power in this book. So great. Talks a lot about relationships and society at the time and female relationship. Oh, it's so good. If you haven't read it, read it. This is one of the non-toxic books written during the time of Jane Austen. So, read it. The next two books, I'm going to wrap these two together. The first one, because they're kind of, they're similar in a way. So first, we're going to talk, the first one is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, one of the Bronte sisters. This is her only novel. I think. Yeah. Only novel she ever wrote. And I dropped it. Okay. So, this is about a guy. It's a guy that is telling the story. And you're like, Caitlin, why did you read this in Women's Life? Listen. So, he falls in love with a woman who is divorced and has a kid and living in a house all by herself and has a job. She paints and she sells her paintings. And she doesn't want to get married, and she had a toxic relationship beforehand, and I don't know if I recommend this so much because you have to get past the weirdness that the guy's writing a letter to his friend. He got a hold of the girl's Ellen, or Helen. I think it's Helen. I'm going to get these two mixed up because the names in both of these are extremely similar, and I'm like, what? Helen. This is Helen. This is Ellen. So, Helen has a diary, and then he reads the diary, and then he writes what happens in her diary entries on a letter to his friend. It's weird. So you're learning her story from diary entries that are written on a letter to, and so he's taking out some parts and you don't know the whole story, and you're like, what is he taking out? What's he adding to the story? Possibly. We know he's taking out some stuff because he mentions it straight up in the book that he takes some parts out because it's boring. And I just, anyways. It's a good talk about like divorce and being a single mom during this time. So And then we move on to this book, which is called The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. So, let me get these names correct. This is because the guys, their names are also very similar. He's Arthur or Archer. I think this is Archer. This is Archer. And this is Arthur. I should have, read something. Anyways, so this one is also has a divorced woman. And her name is Ellen. You see my predicament here? They're very similar. And she is the powerhouse like Elizabeth Darcy, where she does what she wants. And she's trying to get back into society, but society doesn't want her. So she's cousin with a woman named May, who is to marry our protagonist, Arthur. Yes. He falls in love with Ellen, even though he's engaged to May. And he knows he should not marry Ellen because it would ruin his mother and his sister's lives if he was to marry Ellen over May. So it's a story of, do you go with what your heart desires, or do you do what is good for not only you and your whole family and the people, and who are you hurting? And it's also, May is a manipulative girl. She is what society wants during this time. But she's kind of manipulative too, because she knows that Arthur loves Ellen. So she, gets pregnant while they're married, and now you can't leave because we have a baby, and if you leave, that's going to look really, really bad on him, on Arthur, if he leaves. So, and goes to Ellen. It's a great story of trying to figure out yourself. Again, it's in the eyes of a man. The next book I'm going to talk about is, it's one of my favorite authors. I really enjoy her. She's really, really funny, super funny. Read A Room of One's Own and read this book, Orlando, by Virginia Woolf. She is hilarious. Oh my goodness, Virginia Woolf. I want to be best friends with Virginia Woolf, to be honest. She's great. So Orlando is about a man, hear me out, who turns into a woman one day. And he stays a woman. It ends and he's still a woman. So it's him learning. It's kind of funny how everyone just accepts that now he's a woman. And you can take this to be transgender, going from man to woman, just dressing as a woman. Or you can, take this as, whatever. If you want to take it as transgender, go for it. She was very, very careful about it and having the literal sense. And you can read it any way you want to read it. I think it has good rep for those. If you were just to give it a shot and read, it has the traditional gender norms, but it's really all about a man learning how to be a woman in this society when he could do anything he wanted to not being able to do anything he wanted to do, because now he's a woman and now he has to get married and then all of that kind of stuff. And it's kind of interesting because at one point his finger, his like left, this finger right here. I'm not flipping off the camera. This one right here starts like vibrating at one point, meaning like this weird sense of like getting married and everything. Yes. I also highly recommend A Room of One's Own by her, because it's theory, and it's just so good, and it's hilarious as well. She's so funny. So it's not dry humor. It's not dry. I think you could read it fairly easily. She is very approachable. Her way of writing is kind of, I mean, like, her writing style is very, very, like, kind of hard to get into, because she just writes and writes and writes and writes, and like when you think of traditional like chapters and everything, she doesn't do it. Her other novel, Miss Dalloway, I know is a lot harder to get into than Orlando, so I recommend. So I have decided that I am just going to split this into two. So we'll cover the rest of the books that I have here in another video, maybe the next video. I might be doing something different. So this might also get pushed to another time. So yeah, so the books that we talked about today, we'll just go over the books we talked about today. Things I think you should read. Feminist Power, mainly, is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. And Orlando by Virginia Woolf, and I also recommend reading A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. That's been it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like. If you have read any of these novels, tell me what you think. Let's have a conversation about these books and what you think down below. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.